Thanks a lot for staying with us on TVC Breakfast. Well, hours after the nation was thrown into blackout as electricity workers shut down operations over what they described as government's failure to address staff welfare, they went back on their decision to suspend the strike. And after a meeting with the federal government, they expressed hopes that their demands would be met. Now, some of those demands include a strict adherence to stipulated conditions of service and the payment of 16-month entitlements for former PHCN workers. Also of significance to them is a reversal of a circular from the head of service stopping former PHCN staff from being enrolled in public service. Well, joining us to give us an overview of all these issues, we have with us in the studio the team lead, Platforms Africa and an Energy Policy Analyst. Adeola Yusuf is also an award-winning journalist, by the way. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me. Good
Welcome. So what do you make of the issues? First, the strike, the notice of the strike took place, the suspension, and now here we are.
Okay, unfortunate is the word, because no one expected, even I believe people in government didn't even expect that that would happen. Remember that a few hours before that strike was declared, even after the strike was declared, before this proper strike action, the Ministry of Power quickly issued a statement begging the workers not to go on strike. Maybe that was when they, started seeing the signs that these people are serious. And I think on all fronts, that strike was very unfortunate because a lot of revenues were lost yesterday. A nation of this population, a nation that is striving, to overcome recession, a nation that is doing a lot, shouldn't allow even 1 hour to be subjected to this darkness. But unfortunately, that is what we have seen. But it's very, very important that I say something here, and that is what we saw yesterday, because a lot of Nigerians didn't, even though TVC and every other media trying to clarify, didn't happen between all the electricity workers. It happened between workers in the transmission, stratum of the electricity industry. And we all understand that in the entire power value chain, we have the generation, we have the transmission, and we have the distribution. So the generation has been privatized on Friday, October 1st, 2013. The distribution has been privatized. Government still held the transmission in the sandpit. And the workers still have that orientation, the government workers' orientation. That is what brought us to this level. And we all understand that transmission is the link between the generation and so over 4,000 megawatts, was generated yesterday by the generation companies. They just wasted. They were just wasted because power is not renewable. Once you have generated power, it has to be used, or you have to just waste it. So at that hand, 4,000 megawatts, wasted. At the other hand, zero. When they shut all the transmission stations yesterday, generation dropped to 0 megawatts, and there was nothing to distribute. All the distribution companies privatized this time around, started issuing what I'll call force majeure to their customers, saying that there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do. And this time yesterday, Nigeria was having 0 megawatts. So it's very, very unfortunate. Using the MBT data, it has shown that for that hours that Nigeria went into darkness, quote and unquote, the electricity industry lost over 2 billion naira. That is only electricity industry. You are not talking of the small scale, medium scale industries that have to run. Because yesterday when I was doing an analysis, I think it was between the Frio Army and the Red Sea. They had to run back to Disu yesterday, and you know what Disu is saying when it talks to. So by and large, it's very, very unfortunate that we had that situation.
Thank you for clearing that issue, because the first thing somebody asked me yesterday is, why are they going on strike? Are they not all privatized? And it's very good you clarified it. This idea of being PHTN, you have to elaborate on it. The PHTN, what amount of shadow is it still casting on the electricity companies as they stand today? Because it looks like the past is still important.
Okay, thank you so much. It's very, very important that we state here that between the time that real privatization happened and now, the only major area that we are still having problem is that transmission. You know, I think the last time we were talking about national grid. National grid is still within the confines of transmission. So it's only the transmission that say has 100% PACN staff strength. And one thing that I will not say outside or even inside is to criticize the worker for fighting for their welfare. But one thing that saddened my heart yesterday was that in all that they presented for shutting the country down yesterday, nothing has to do with the state of power sector.
Exactly.
I was thinking that even when ASU will go on strike based on their welfare, they will still want to ingest something to, you know, carry everyone university structure and all that. But yesterday it was all you know, welfare and welfare. I said it earlier. I won't criticize them for fighting for their welfare, but I think to me it didn't all go. It doesn't make it look so good. It still, you know, falls back to the fact that orientation, the government workers orientation, PSN orientation, is still within that cycle. And I think until we start seeing it, that it has gone beyond that. Power is one of, you know, a national service. One of, just like, you know, those in medical line, power generation, distribution, and transmission should be seen in that regard as well. And I think maybe those in government may want to start, you know, blaming themselves for not privatizing the transmission, you know, sector too. But I know that, you know, based on what happened yesterday, talks are ongoing to make sure that that transmission is structured. Maybe through restructuring, they will make sure that, you know, we don't have a reoccurrence of this. But unfortunately, it's just 2 weeks that we have now, because the agreement they had, according to Joe Ajero yesterday, was to go back to that table 2 weeks to review whether government has complied. And he even said that he has not assured anybody that before the next 6 months, the experience, the very sad experience we had in the country yesterday, we won't have a repeat of that. That is now where I want to just call on government to, you know, I know that they are trying their best, because one will not blame the government, you know, 100%. President Muhammad Buhari, for those that are following the sector, as, you know, being in government with 3 ministers of power. We remember Babatunde Raji Fashola. We remember Maman Saleh. He fired Maman Saleh to bring Abubakar Aliyu, and this has kept coming. So he has shown that government, immediately President Muhammad Buhari, you know, appointed Babatunde Raji Fashola, former governor of Lagos. A lot of people felt that, okay, he seriously wanted a change in the power sector, and I still believe that. So for that to now show, you need to take this so seriously. We cannot afford to have, you know, what we had yesterday.
Let me take you back to your earlier point, your earliest point, where you spoke about, you know, the natural or the regular sentiments of the average worker, especially at the TCN. Now, on the other hand, the federal government says that, you know, what happened yesterday was essentially a dispute between 2 in-house unions. That's the National Union of Employees, the NUEE, as well as the Senior Staff Association of Electricity and Allied Companies. Where does that fall in your assessment of what we have on ground?
Well, I think that's an escapist, you know, view, if you like. What happened yesterday, the senior staff are those that are supposed to represent the government. At the end of the day, is the government, you know, Minister of Labor and all of them that were on the table with NUEE. So what are we now saying? And unfortunately, as someone asked me yesterday to quantify the amount of losses we recorded yesterday, no one will be able to do that.
It is not possible.
No one will be able to do that. It's very unfortunate that people that, you know, will buy, you know, credits on their prepaid meter will try to do whatever they can to ensure that their companies keep running, to ensure that their homes keep running. We unfortunately not have that. Why will you not have values for money that you are paying, regardless of what is happening in the entire value chain? So I think the government should stop all these escapees. Like I said, you can't put the blame on one. I think the blame cuts across. You understand? So the government shouldn't try to just say that, okay, it happens between 2 unions. But at the end of the day, what is the result? the entire country being run by that same government is put
Especially as we also see when you break down their grievances that one of the issue, or perhaps one would say one of the main issues also has to do with entitlements, welfareism, packages for ex-workers. I mean, this is also a frequent narrative that we see, especially with government and its duties to its staff and former staff.
Yes, yes, and it's only TCN that inherited the former PCN staff. The generation companies inherited some of them. The distribution, 11 distribution companies inherited. Why didn't government ask what those ones did to ensure that we don't have that? One thing that we cannot fault, even the private sector may be profit-driven and whatsoever, you cannot fault private sector in ensuring some things are put in place. Those people have been paid off, they have been settled. Those that were, the old staff in distribution and generation. Why not in transmission that government is still holding in sandpit? It's not necessary the government should, sell off everything. Even in the distribution and the generation that we're talking about now, government still has 40% shares in those ones. It's only the operation and the management has been run by the private sector. Why don't government replicate something like that in the TCN? In as much as what is most important is for us to have power. So it shouldn't get to the level that the entire country will be put in this kind of mess before government will start doing the right thing.
Explain what they meant by some people who were in office, who were acting position, who were not in acting position, and they want to regularize. Explain all of those.
The regularize, I need to understand.
Yes, the positions. There's some people were GM and acting GM, all of that. Right, and so what was that about?
Okay, thank you. It's very, very funny. Very funny. I say very funny because government civil service has its role. So, and the private sector has its role. We may not be so much at home with it, but the way it's supposed to be in the government sector is that every certain month there should be a letter of promotion. Every certain month, whether the person, whatsoever the situation is, every certain month there should be a call for interview, promotional interview. Every certain month, unlike in the private sector, you have to merit it before that happens. I think still in the TCN, we don't have, I think part of the operation wants to just liken it to the private sector when it comes to the staff promotion and all that, and that is what these people are kicking against.
One-man business.
One-man business. That's what these people are kicking against, and you can't fault them because they have, they have something to show that this is the way it should be run. If government is not so at home with that, why don't governments, look at how things should be done, in a way that will. But the most important thing to all Nigerians, and what should be the most important thing to government, is to make sure that for 1 minute we don't have that kind of situation. We can understand if we have a grid collapse based on a technical issue, not people going there to switch off all the transmission story. It's not so good. It's not so good. One thing that by the end of today, we start hearing stories of people on life support,
due
to that
losing their lives. You will start hearing stories. Some you will not even hear. It's very unfortunate. A nation shouldn't be put into darkness.
I said it before we started the show that turning off the light by the workers is something that they could not sustain because it's a great PR nightmare for them. People are not going to support it, that you are taking off our electricity because you want to solve your own problems. It touches too many things in our lives. And I'm happy you talked about the issue of hospitals, because that was what I had in mind. There's a lot of stories will come out of this about either fatalities or near fatalities or emergencies and so on. When Fashola was Minister of Power, he used to say something. He said his job as minister was policy. Was the agencies were more saddled with the power to give us power than the minister. And I was saying at that time, which means that who is the person to force the agencies to work? If it's not the minister, then it must be the commander-in-chief or the president. So when you were talking earlier, saying that the president has tried, he has fired this, he has fired that, he has not done the thing he's supposed to do.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. I think for some of us that have little understanding of the policy and polity and politics of the power sector, you see that it takes more than what we are seeing now to ensure that we have stability in that sector. And let me go back to history. We remember that the late Chief Bola Ige, before he was appointed the Minister of Power, yes, he said a lot about turning, yes, he said a lot about making sure that, okay, it's not, that's not a problem. We remember former Lagos State Governor, Babatola Fasola, saying that it doesn't take a rocket science to ensure that Nigeria has power. But he was there for 4 years. One thing that we know, about that sector is that there is a lot of people sabotaging that, sector, that are milking. And one of them, they may not like it. Are they
coming from the system, or are they
from
outside?
the system? From the system. One thing about power sector is that it's highly technical. You can't. There are some areas that you will not be able to push to operate if you have not stayed within that sector for more than 5 years. So it's highly technical. And the reason it was technical, we all understand the elementary physics. Mike Faraday that discovered electricity was electrocuted by electricity. So it is highly technical. No one jokes with anything there. Those that have that reservoir of knowledge are not being sincere. I think we need serious orientation about patriotism in that sector. It's beyond even the minister.
So you have answered my question.
Yes, sir.
that is the man who is in charge. I would say, fix that.
Fix that.
Yeah, the minister cannot go there and tell the person in charge and say, fix it. Because the person will say, well, it's not your... You have given us the policy.
The minister can't
go
even
and sleep.
fix it.
You have given us the policy. Go and sleep. This is our area. But if somebody who can fire somebody who is in charge of that technical thing that is not there, fires him, then they will fix it.
I think because...
So you need some kind of, what do you call it, czar.
Knowledge, okay.
A kind of electricity czar.
Yes.
Will that work?
No,
even with the issues?
What will happen is that we need everyone in that entire value chain. And I want to start advocating, I've been doing that before now, that the transmission stratum of that value chain has to be looked into again. All the time that we've been talking about power sector, even though the distribution have issues with crazy billing system, not supplying meters and all that, the generation may have their own with gas, but all the time is this transmission that we keep having problem with. And the reason is that we still have people that still have that sense of entitlement within that sector. And I mean, within that stratum, in the distribution, in the generation, no one in the distribution will say it's going on strike. Because it's being run, even though government has 40% share.
But there are still issues. There are still issues with our generation. There are still issues with the distribution.
There are issues there. One thing that I keep commending the government, Nigerian government, for is the initiative of trying to try privatization in the power sector, because but in the distribution, no one can say it's going on strike. We have unions there, but they cannot go on strike because why will you say you are going on strike? Why will you say you are going on strike? Those people don't joke with staff welfare because the private sector are driven. They won't. But you too would not. You have to play your part, because if you are not playing your part, the next day they'll tell you to start going to your house. But you cannot do that. Not that I'm advocating, that, but you cannot do that in the transmission that still has, people having that orientation that, okay, we are still working for government. And I think that until everyone in that entire value chain starts seeing that power is beyond what they are, working, on to end their living issues, until they start seeing that it's something that is of national the value and importance and security. I think we keep talking about this. I want the government to not only go back to the table again and talk with the NUI, the National Union of Electricity Employees in the transmission. I want the government to start thinking of how to fix this and to permanently fix it.
So it doesn't appear that we have reached an end. How enduring, people have said how enduring, how sustainable is this suspension of strike when there are still, lingering issues? It doesn't appear we've come to the end.
It doesn't appear, to use the statement of Joajero, the leader of the NUI, he said that they asked them to suspend the strike, and the definition of suspend means that it's not they have not called it off totally, that they can still revisit it, that they have 2 weeks to go back to the table to review whether government has been able to meet some certain demand. That he said it categorically that so even before 6 months they can still go back to so it shows that we can't still sleep with our 2 eyes closed. And once you keep having that problem with transmission, generation and distribution will do nothing, because that is the link between the two.
And the waste will still continue.
Then there's this thing that was Judge made, which was a very significant point about the workers feeling that it is just about their own welfare and so on. There was somebody who was interviewed yesterday in the UK over the cost of living, because UK is experiencing its worst inflation in 40 years, and it has affected their cost, their capacity to make a living, as it were. So one of the firefighters was asked whether he will go on strike if things didn't change, because he got only 2% raise, and he said, it's a very difficult decision to make, because we are not here just because of the money, because we're also here because the value of a firefighter in the society is very significant. We can't just afford to just say we are going on strike, because there are lives there to be saved. So that is the kind of consideration we didn't see with our
and I know that even in the unionism, even if you are foreseeing something for your personal gain, you still mirror it in a way that will look like. But very unfortunate yesterday, because I looked through the agitation, I looked through the memo signed by the leadership of that union. There's nothing to say that, they are not happy with the way the power sector is being. It was just welfare.
That they should increase transmission from 5,000
to say that Nigerians are suffering, businesses are closing up, and
nothing
all
like that.
You look at ASU, even though you still see conspicuously on the demand that their welfare is there, they will still want to talk about the university system, how other Nigerian universities has not been rated, within
Although
the welfare.
in ASU, I see that most of the thing holding them down is their money. It's the money, their own welfare. They are masking it in other things.
So that is
but then of course, the university structure, the present look of our public universities, of course, is even obvious to everyone, not just people who operate in the system.
So they can mask it and come up with and use that one as a cover. So we are striking. But don't you think it's also time that the university lecturers understood that sacrifice is important even in education?
All right, Adeola Yusuf, we'll let you go. We'll let you go now. We are inching the top of the hour, and there's still so much more. But thanks a lot for the insights that you bring to this burning issue regarding our power sector. Many thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.